Hey everybody, welcome back to the next gen edition of this. I'm your host, Shauna Griffiths, and today's Real Talk is with an up and coming real leader, Laura Rodriguez. So welcome, Laura, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so excited to do this with you. Yeah, it's definitely a first, but I think I couldn't have done it with a better person than you, and I'm just excited that you brought me in today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having the courage to come on. I know, as I was saying to you earlier, I still get nervous for these, so I know that you might probably get nervous too. But before we start, folks, I'll give you a little bit of context. Laura has become a very good friend of mine and feels a bit like an extended family member. I knew about you, Laura, before I knew you. So Laura's now fiance, Matt Bailey, is founder and CEO of Game On Entertainment and Technologies, which I advise for. So shout out to you, Matt. Thank you so much for introducing Laura to me. And I say it because I've had the joy of watching you evolve through, knowing you over the years and everything. So it's just been so awesome to see you like really find your footing and I know it sounds so cheesy to say, but like blossom in your career. And so now you are absolutely killing it in a really competitive industry, in the beverage industry, with the Lemon Perfect company. And so that's why I'm having you on here, and I'm just so excited to get right into it. So let's talk a little bit about your evolution from college to the role you have created for yourself now as the Southeast area sales manager, I believe, for the Lemon Perfect company.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been such a roller coaster and different paths throughout the journey. I initially started in college with mass communication. I knew I loved writing and loved communication. I didn't know what area specifically I was going to go. I thought I was going to end up in journalism. But as I was in school, I always grew up actually loving acting.
Oh.
And so I took a whole bunch of classes here in Miami, and that was a passion of mine. And it was always in the back of my head of wanting to pursue it seriously. And so as I was going to college, I started just getting more and more that itch of like, you know what, I should just be all in, and, like really wanted to move to New York because I knew that's where a lot of the great schools were. And so, yeah, I was just studying, and one day I talked to my dad and I said, you know what, like I have this feeling, I want to move to New York. And at that time I was 21, almost 22. So I wanted to just kind of embrace the change and, kind of move out from home. So yeah, I moved to New York, and I was all into the craft of acting and filmmaking. So I went in a 2-year program in a studio called William Esper Studio, which is very well known in the acting industry. So, which was an amazing home for any actor. And I learned so much about myself, about the craft, because I was like obviously struggling paying bills in New York. It's so expensive. And so I always had random jobs to like pay while I was in my school. And I came across this part-time brand ambassador job that was for the spirits industry, which I didn't know much about. But I was like, hey, they say you have a good personality. It was like, I think $27 an hour. I was like, this sounds great. So yeah, I started doing part-time gigs with marketing. And in New York, I mean, I think I did it for maybe a year and a half, where I would just work for different agencies, really hustle, like try to get any gig I could. I was also dancing in a bar mitzvah event, like just literally any gig I could get while I was also auditioning and trying to, get the acting stuff going on. But I had to move out from where I was. So obviously that's kind of where adulting started more, and I had to pay more rent, get a new car, and everything just kind of came out once. And yeah, one of my mentors, actually, a really good friend of mine now, she was the senior manager at a big agency, Geometry Global. And so I worked closely with her because I would do a lot of gigs for that agency. And she always told me, like, you should be the manager, you should be the manager. I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to do acting. But when all those changes happened where I had to move out and just change a lot of stuff in my life, she'll ask me again, and that's where I like really transition career. So I don't know if you have any questions on that. I mean, I can keep going on how I got to where I am, but that was like the start of how I really got introduced to marketing.
That's so interesting. And it's funny because even though I think I know you, I didn't know all of that. So thank you so much for sharing it. And I think some of what is great to hear you talk about is how much like your drive and your commitment to what you're trying to do. And, as I said earlier, I said like you created this opportunity for yourself, the seat you have now with Lemon Perfect. But I think all the stuff you talked about really those were like steps on your path to get to where you are today. So it's great, I think, especially we have this next gen episode to hear from people like you early in your career, finding success and how do you do it? And so, it is really great for you to talk so openly about that. So, so thank you so much for that. But so give people an idea of what Lemon Perfect is, like, give me a snapshot of the company, and then we can talk a little bit about what your role is today. Like, what's an average day for Laura?
Oh, yeah. So, well, right now I'm in the sales industry, right? With my role is in the Miami area. Lemon Perfect is honestly something I'm a testimony to it. Like, I'm a 100% consumer every day of Lemon Perfect because it really is like it's a flavored water, no sugar, tons of flavor. So if there's someone that's looking to get hydrated but doesn't really feel like having plain water, but you still want the benefits of something healthy, good for you, it's ideal. So I suck at drinking water. So, and Matt always tells me like, you gotta drink more water. But I know like when I'm consuming Lemon Perfect, I'm consuming my vitamin C. Lemons are so good for you. And I always knew lemons were good for you, but since I started working with Lemon Perfect, I really know all the benefits that you get. So it's like a super, super fruit. But yeah, that's Lemon Perfect. It's good for you flavor water. And my day to day, it's really being out in the field. It's field sales. And I started with Publix as my only account. Publix is a huge supermarket down here in the whole Southeast, but in Florida especially, it's huge. So, I went from not knowing anything about sales to really just my day-to-day is walking into a store, building that relationship with my buyers, which is really close now. Like I know them so well, and just increasing the sales, the business, and we've done that. So it's really exciting that we've had such a successful year. But yeah, that's my day-to-day, just going in, selling as much as I can, and like you mentioned, it's so competitive. So it's like a fight every single day. Like I could go in today and, for example, sell cold space. Cold space we call a cooler, right? Anyone who goes to Publix and wants a cold beverage, it's great if you have it available. So every beverage wants fighting for that space.
Yeah.
So I could get it today, and then I come back next week, and there's a competitor that took my space. So, but when you build the trust and the relationship, you have that person in that Publix that would be like, nope, that's Lemon Perfect spot. So it's my job to build that with the store. So when I'm not there, they take care of me.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think again, those are like some of the keys because people are sometimes like a mystery. How do you make it happen? And so I do think like relationships are so important, which actually leads me to another thing. So because I know you're from Bolivia and you moved here when you were 8. And I know that was part of your story, of your evolution. And I'm curious, so New York City is a really, I think, multicultural environment, but Miami's a little different, kind of ball of wax. And I'm curious how your culture, your heritage, and being bilingual, you think really contributes to your success in your role right now.
Oh yeah, tons. When I lived in New York, I definitely learned other cultures that were not necessarily in the Hispanic Latin culture. So coming back, it's falling to my roots. I mean, being bilingual in Miami, you have to. There's no way you can succeed in sales without knowing Spanish in my territory. Obviously, if you go more north, you'll find it. But here it's very necessary. And I love it because I feel comfortable. I knew that when I made the transition from New York to Miami, I was going to my hometown, to my backyard where I feel comfortable, and it would be something a little easier for me to, kind of go into. But yeah, like you said, New York is also super diverse. And so I'm just glad that I got to see both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet as you're talking about it, makes me think when you say you can really feel comfortable. So I think that probably helps you like in building those relationships, you can just totally be your authentic self, which I talk about so much because I think that's part of how we emerge as real leaders is when you can really stand in your strength as your authentic self and come from that place. So it doesn't feel forced at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think also, I mean, speaking Spanish is a big part. I still find it funny sometimes because when you're in a work scenario, especially at the beginning when I started working and you introduce yourself, like you obviously know that person speaks Spanish by just the name and or you hear them talking to Spanish to their team. But then, like, do I start in English? Do I start in Spanish? Because I've also run into like very few, but like some people in Miami that I would start speaking in Spanish, they would reply in English. So it's like, okay, like I know you speak English, you want Spanish. So even also like, I in marketing, I do a lot of demos still to support my account. And it's crazy how like the consumers just, you have to know the product in Spanish because in some stores, literally 90% of the foot traffic is just full on Spanish. So if you didn't speak Spanish, you couldn't communicate to the consumers or sometimes the employees as well. So yeah, but for me, obviously, growing up in Miami, that's why it was harder to learn English. When I moved to Bolivia, it took me longer because you don't have the necessity to speak English all the time. Everyone speaks Spanish. So yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, it is so interesting too that I think it's more than just the language, right? That's why I mentioned the culture and the heritage because I think that connection and that authentic is not just like speaking the language, it's about knowing
the behavior too. Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah, I love the way you're leaning into it and really making it, just work for you and it feels so natural. And I think that's part of what I say when I watched you like evolve and come into your comfort zone. It's awesome to see. So congratulations on that. Okay, so get into a little bit of the crossover of the personal and the professional, which I often talk about. There's such a parallel, right? And so this has been such a big year for you. I mean, you have had it, again, in both professional and personal. So you, as you said, you moved from New York City to Miami. You got a new territory in your job from Northeast to Southeast, adapting to all of that, got a new house, got engaged, congratulations. So and you're now a dog mom to Milo, who is just the cutest pup. So, I mean, goodness, that's a lot for anybody at any career at any point in their life. And you've been doing it all during the pandemic, which is, I mean, it's a lot, but I'm curious about like, talk to us about that and how's it been? Because I was teasing you a little bit about like, do you make it like you make adulting seem so easy and fun and great? And so, talk to us about that. Is it as good as you make it look?
No, I definitely think if you would see me on like a day to day, there's so many times, and I have to like constantly do this back and forth where there's days that I'm like, oh my God, Laura, you need to act like an adult. Like you're 30 now. It's time to not do that. And there's days where I'm like, wow, I've come so far. Yeah. I'm so proud how I handled that situation, how our relationship with Matt is evolved as well. There's so many little things on a day to day that I've just got so much more like emotional control. And that has helped me so much, like in just every stage, like work wise, the engagement, the house. I think I handle stress way better now, but that hasn't always been easy. And there's days that obviously I feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
My husband John, and so he thankfully keeps me grounded a lot by reminding me like we're all basically figuring out as we go. None of us really know what we're doing.
It's those conversations, like it's having that conversation with someone else, because obviously Matt, I see him every day, so sometimes it becomes normal and you become immune to his challenges. But then you talk to someone outside your normal circle, and you go, whoa, okay, I totally thought your life was amazing and great and everything's under control. But I think we, like you said, every now and then we come across this conversation. We're like, yeah, we're all struggling and we all have great days too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But, adjusting and adaptability is a huge part. And it's also been like a mantra for me, which one of my first bosses and mentors, Felicia Hall Allen, told me, or that was one of my biggest lessons that I pass on to people. She said to me, Shauna, you're doing great, but girl, you got to be adaptable. And I was like, oh goodness. And from talking to you and knowing you and hearing your story, especially with this last year, I know that adaptability has been, something that you've actually been able to draw on, and that came, and I feel that was linked to when you moved here from Bolivia. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and how you think that's helped to shape your ability to adapt and adjust.
Yes, I think younger, I was forced to change things from my parents getting divorced, and choosing who to live with. Then I was not forced, but then we had to move as a child. You don't have a say, so we moved to America. Learning a new language and seeing things I've never seen. Just those things, I think it did take time. I mean, back then you don't really think on how you do it, but then once it's in your character, it definitely. I am super about change now, and I think I enjoy it so much. Even I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes things happen, and I got laid off 2 years ago. And obviously, thank God, I'm at a point in my life where I can look for a new opportunity, and that's exciting. It sucks to get laid off, but that change is exciting.
Yeah.
So I think coming from Bolivia was a big moment, and then moving to New York was another big moment that really shaped adjusting. Like the little things as like weather, how to live in specific weathers, and how to make money to live, and relationships too, because like you mentioned, culture. In Miami, I grew up full of Colombians, Venezuelans. So the culture was very different, and how you date is different. Like there's no Tinder really with my friends, like circle friends. You meet people through friends.
Yeah.
So to go to New York and try to meet friends or people is like you go on apps, or it's just so different. But I think I love adjusting, and I think just being open-minded to the change and seeing always what can bring to you is helpful. And having someone that feels like home no matter where you are and what you're going through, that's obviously key.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you talked about that as like this openness to the change, because, when I think back to my journey earlier on, and I similarly had the disruption early in my life that had nothing to do with my career, but it was like these changes, but differently, I think that I grew to a place where I was like resistant to the change, and it would it was almost like I was like putting on the brakes. And I think that was hard for me to then be, so that again, that's why I ended up with someone thankfully early in my career being like, no, you need to be adaptable. And so it's an interesting how we all can respond differently, but it's that the unlocking of the openness to the change and inviting it instead of fighting it, I think is so key. So first of all, like, congratulations to you in your journey for having the awareness of that. Again, it's kind of like, if I wish I knew then what I know now. So, and you do. So it's awesome to see. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The more you do it and you see something come out of it, I think the more you start wanting to be like, you know what, let's move cities. I know it gets harder as you have kids or even a dog now, but it's changes I've always think they're great. But it's super interesting to hear from you as well. I didn't know. So it's so awesome how you've been able to open up. So
yeah, true. It's funny, like I often say about how we all not all, but to a large degree, we suffer similarly. I'm air quoting as I say that, folks. You know, and I think it's like, a lot of times we don't talk about these things, but again, it's so helpful. And that's a huge reason why I have this platform and I bring people on to just have real conversation and be real about it, because there's so much that we don't know, and we can make assumptions that, like you said earlier, someone's life is so perfect that they have it all together. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about it so we can learn from each other, and then hopefully can be more fun and less painful.
Yeah. No, I am the guiltiest person of letting social media also like show me other people's perfectness, and me trying to, you know, I mean, you're not going to ever see probably a picture of me crying on social media, but because most of the time you don't share those moments, right? But yeah, it's definitely something that I try to use it less and more for other types of things that are more valuable than, you know, looking at those perfect pictures. But damn, it's hard sometimes, because you're like, I scroll and I see all these like amazing influencers and photos. Even decorating my house, I'm like, I'm trying to make it look like some of these pictures that I see. I'm like, no, I can't. I'm gonna waste all my money if I try to get to that point. So yeah, I have to remind myself.
It's so true. But again, I think we have these things that like we can call on to ground ourselves and like snap us out of these moments. And that's again where I think it's so great to be able to see the amount of awareness you have, because I think that's the kind of thing that makes us stop in those moments. Because I find it too. I'm like scrolling, and all of a sudden, like I literally have this out of body thing where I'm watching myself think that someone else has this, and I'm like, whoa, put it down, walk away.
Yes, yes. Your perception just goes to a different level. But I love your podcast and what you're doing. I like changes and things like this sometimes, and I imagine, but sometimes I don't execute and do them. So I think the fact that you've been able to do all of this, put together amazing people for your podcast, I want to congratulate you, because I know how far you've also come since I've met you. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you. It has been and continues to be quite a journey. So, but I really wouldn't have it if I didn't have people like you who are willing to come on and share what it's like to be a real authentic leader. And especially, you know, as you're coming up, and, you know, for that other people can look to you, you know, whether they're your peers or they are that generation ahead of you, which actually brings me to some of the closing things I wanted to get before we part is, you know, again, I think that sometimes there's this like generational gaps and there's generational perceptions. And so I'm curious if there's anything that you wish that the generation ahead of you, so my generation, I suppose, you know, just knew in general, or you wish they realized, or you wish that they knew it about your generation?
I definitely would say how important is experience in anything they're passionate about. Because I think a lot of time we waste time thinking of, I don't say school is a waste of time. It is something that's needed. And I think anyone that wants to go to school should go to school. But I think in our generation, I have seen how just having experience and also connection, like relationships is everything. So I think finding the right person and mentors in your life that give you that one shot really is all you need. Because you can have all the degrees in the world, but if you have no experience and you don't have that person that gives you your first shot, it can mean nothing. So I feel like spend more time living life, meeting people, and really experiencing different things, so that way you really know what you like. Because if you don't do it, you don't know.
Right.
So I would say that.
So it sounds like you're thinking that like if the generation ahead of you starts to look for and value that the people coming up have more experiences than just the textbooks, which I totally believe. I actually, someone who I interviewed, he's amazing. And he actually works the agency that's at CMD that I work at now. And in the interview process, he said to me like something about he didn't finish college. And I was like, I don't care. Why did you tell me this? Because he's amazing and he's absolutely thriving. And so I absolutely am validating what you're saying, that I think that experience matters so much. And like a degree, like somebody's grade point in college doesn't mean, it doesn't mean much to me. So that's a great point. And then the last one I want to ask you is, if there's one takeaway that you want listeners to have from our time here today, what would that be?
I would lean with the change again. I think sometimes people react well to change, but after it has happened, I think it's also important to look for it. Sometimes, you're just with life and things happen, but a lot of times things are going great and they're kind of plateau. So I think it's important to look for change, because that's really where you can challenge yourself. You learn so much about yourself, and kind of switch things up in your routines. And it could be a small change. It doesn't have to be like life changing. But yeah, for me, I think always looking for that change
Not to be
from your life.
complacent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not to be complacent, and just that'll help you learn so much no matter what age you are.
Well, this has been so fun. Like, just again, it's been so amazing for me to watch you as you've evolved and all the wonderful things you're doing. And I'm so grateful to be a part of your journey. So thank you for that opportunity. Thanks for coming here today. And I wish you nothing but the best, lady.
Thank you, Shauna, and same to you. I really appreciate you. Max, I appreciate you so much too. Before I go, I'm going to check if Mila's out here, because I wanted to put him on camera.
Hello.
Let's see. We can.
Did it come? Hola.
Right here. All right. Say hi. Oh, I can't get him to be. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Hi,
Hola. He's so beautiful.
Oh, good boy. So thank you again. It was so nice to be here, and we'll keep in touch after this. But sending you big hugs. Thank you for having me, Shauna.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye.